I am Katie from the Faulkner County Library here in Conway, Arkansas, and we are here with a taste test kitchen at home. Today, we are going to be walking through how to make spiderweb brownies, especially for the Halloween season. The recipe that we will be following for the brownies is from homemadeinthekitchen.com, and it will be linked in the description below. And then for the topping, we're going to be using a special marshmallow webbing, which is just marshmallows heated up. So you don't really need a recipe for that, but I'm sure you could find one if you would like. The recipe and the ingredients list will be in the description so that you can make sure that everything is set up before you get ready to cook. And before we get ready to cook the brownies, I do want to talk to you a little bit about food safety and kitchen hygiene. So first, you want to make sure that anytime you handle food, you want to have clean hands. So if you haven't washed your hands in a little while, take this as an opportunity to go and wash your hands, come back, and get ready to get started. The second thing that you're going to want to do is if you have hair that might get in your face, go ahead and pull it back, just because hair in food is not appetizing to anyone. You also want to make sure you have a clean workspace, so go ahead and just kind of clear off a little bit of space that you can work with. And you're going to want to gather all of your ingredients and all of your supplies. So today's supplies are going to include 2 saucepans. You can just use one and just clean it between, but we're going to use the saucepan for 2 different things, both the brownie batter and the marshmallow topping. You're going to want a couple of forks or spoons or butter knives or some kind of utensils, a whisk if you have it, and a rubber spatula. Again, you can substitute some of those utensils. You don't have to have exactly everything. You also, when it's time to cook the brownies, we're going to want to cook them in ramekins, which are little ceramic bowls that can go in the oven. And you're going to want a cookie sheet to put those on. If you don't have ramekins, that's okay. If you have a loaf pan, then you can replace that. It is time to go ahead and get everything ready. Today, we are going to be using eggs, and there is a little bit of note about using eggs. First, you want to make sure and wash your hands after you use them, and you also probably want to avoid eating raw eggs. Sometimes raw egg can make you feel not very great. It's always a good idea to try and look over the recipe before you actually get started cooking so that you don't have to stop what you're doing to go and find an ingredient or stop what you're doing to wait for something. You are going to be able to make 2 ramekin brownies today. So you can either share one with somebody or you can save one for later if you want it to be all yours. And to make things a little speedier in the process, you can go ahead and begin preheating your oven to 350 degrees. And so that way it will be ready for you to put the brownies in once we get the batter mixed up and ready to go. We are going to start by turning on the stove because we're going to heat up butter and chocolate chips to melt them in order to get us our base for the brownie batter. So you want to use 4 tablespoons of butter, which is about half a stick if you're using stick butter. And then half a cup of chocolate chips. If you have a little extra, that's going to be okay. So your butter and your chocolate chips are going to be in the pot on the stove. You want to cook it at about medium temperature probably. And you are going to want to stir this regularly to make sure that you don't burn it. And this process should not take you very long at all. You can put the butter in as one whole thing, or if you cut it into smaller pieces, it might heat up even faster, but one thing is fine. And just stir your butter and your chocolate chips together. So you can see that it's kind of mixing together and melting. It is on its way, so we are going to keep stirring to make sure it does not burn. These brownies are going to have the perfect amount of chocolatey goodness in them. As you can see, the chocolate is pretty melty. The butter is taking a little bit longer, but that's okay as long as you keep stirring it. And if at any point it seems like your chocolate or your butter is melting too much or is getting too hot, you can always turn down the temperature on the stove. So we're continuing to stir the chocolate chips and the butter together. As you can see, we have a little bit of the butter that has not melted, but we are getting the consistency that we're looking for, that melted chocolate. And so I'm just gonna keep stirring. I'm gonna just use a whisk to make sure that all of the chocolate chips and the butter comes off of my spatula, just so I get all of it in there. And I'm gonna give this one last stir, and then I think everything is melted. Everything is mixed together. I have the consistency I would like for the beginning of the brownie batter, and I am ready to go ahead and take this off the heat so I can move on to my next step. We are gonna go ahead and be working with our sugar, cocoa powder, and salt. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder. So we're gonna add in our tablespoon of cocoa powder. It calls for 1/2 cup of sugar. So we are gonna use our 1/2 cup of sugar. And it calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which you can definitely measure out 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Sometimes when I am cooking for salt, I just kind of sprinkle, just a little sprinkle in to get that. But you can definitely also use a 1/4 teaspoon. And we are going to stir that together. Your batter is gonna start to get a little grainy at this point. That is okay. It's not gonna be as smooth in consistency as it was when we were heating up the chocolate and the butter, but this is about the consistency of our batter that we're looking for at this point. Once you have that mixed to the consistency you are looking for, which is about like this, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next step. The next step is to whisk in the egg and vanilla. So you want to use your egg and you want it to be room temperature. So make sure that it's not just fresh out of the fridge when you are using it. And sometimes when you are cracking eggs, it's easiest to do this in a bowl and then pour it in there, or you can do it over the sink just to make sure that you don't make a mess. We're adding an egg and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So as tempting as it is, try not to taste the batter, and then also you want to make sure that you wash your hands really good after you handle raw egg. Once the egg and the vanilla seems to be mixed in pretty well, we're ready to do our final step before cooking. We are going to add in the flour. And our recipe calls for 1/4 cup of flour. And you do, for this step, the recipe tells us that we're gonna want to switch to a rubber spatula, because once we add the flour in, it's gonna get a little bit tricky to mix. So we're gonna add our 1/4 cup. stir it in. You might have to kind of scrape the sides a bit to get all that flour to mix in. And once you have that mixed in, we are ready to go ahead and get these ready to bake. So we will be cooking these in ramekins, which are little bowls. If you do not have some, then you can use loaf pans or some other small thing to cook the brownies in. So what we're gonna do is fill up our ramekins with our batter. Try to be even. And this does make enough for two. If you're using ramekins, it makes enough for two. So you get to share your brownie with a buddy. Just use your spatula to scoop it into the ramekin. Also, you do not want to overfill your ramekin. So if you're using smaller ones, then you can maybe even get 3 brownies out of it. And you can see I made a little bit of a mess filling the ramekins. That is perfectly fine. I am gonna get this extra off. I think that one sign of a good recipe is if it's a little bit messy in the kitchen after you've made it. I think that's a sign that things are gonna be good. Once you have your ramekins filled and your oven is ready, you are going to safely put them in. And you are going to bake these for about 20 to 25 minutes. Since it is close to Halloween though, I am gonna try something else. I'm gonna make a little spiderweb topping. So what I've done is we're gonna heat up some marshmallows on low temperature and just get them to be a little bit gooey so that when our brownies are ready, we can put a little spiderweb topping on top. If you have a microwave, it also would be pretty easy to heat marshmallows up in the microwave. So just get some either mini marshmallows or jumbo marshmallows, put them in a microwave safe bowl and heat them up that way. I can tell that the bottom of my pan is starting to get a little sticky. So the marshmallows are definitely melting. So we're at this stage of melting the marshmallows. So we're getting there. They're definitely getting softer because they're sticking together more. We just want these to be a consistency that's going to be easy for us to put a little web on the brownies. So I can feel that it's pretty tight. So I am gonna go ahead and take it off of the heat at this point. Our oven has beeped, so we are ready to go ahead and look and see if the brownies are done, and it looks like they are. So this is the consistency that you would like the brownies to be. You want the top to be firm, but not too firm, and you can see a couple of cracks forming, and that is exactly what you are looking for. So now we are gonna let these cool for about 15 minutes before we put the topping on. Once you have given your brownies some time to cool, it is ready to go ahead and put the webbing on there. So what you're gonna do, and honestly, this is gonna be a messy step, and just kind of make it work. So I am gonna use 2 forks to gather up some of my marshmallow and try to get it at least gathered enough to carry over to my brownies, and then attempt to try and get your web to be a little bit stringy. Stretch out the marshmallow, but keep it contained. And if it does not look as much like a spider web as you thought it would, that is perfectly fine. It really helps if you have a clean utensil that you can just kind of scrape your webbing, or even if you wanted to use your fingers and grab a string, and then just, you hopefully have something that resembles somewhat a spider web. If not, as you can see, it will still taste great. Thank you so much for joining me on this month's Taste Test Kitchen at Home. I hope that your spiderweb brownies turned out exactly as you were hoping, and that you were able to build and practice some skills in the kitchen that will give you some confidence in trying new things. Please remember to follow the Faulkner County Library YouTube page for more videos like this, and also the Faulkner County Library Youth Services Facebook page for more information on programming. Thank you.